Oil is not power because you burn it. Oil is power because you control who gets it. Right now, something quiet is happening beneath the noise of headlines. Iranian oil, Venezuelan oil, once flowing east quietly toward China, now constrained, redirected, pressured by American control, not American production. This is not about pumping more barrels. It is about controlling choke points, supply lines, leverage. At the same time, look north, far north. Greenland, the Arctic, spaces once ignored, now essential. Missiles do not respect borders. They follow geography. And geography is being rewritten while China probes the Arctic ice, while Russia drills beneath frozen seas. Alliances strain. Canada hesitates. Asia recalibrates. If this feels disconnected, it isn't. These are pieces of one system. Energy, defense, technology. If you want to understand the next decade before it arrives, stay with me. Because what comes next explains why control, not chaos, is the real strategy here. What you are watching is not escalation, it is rebalancing. For years, the global system ran on an assumption that oil would flow freely, that technology would stay offshore, that geography no longer mattered. That assumption is now breaking. When the United States moves to constrain Iranian and Venezuelan oil, the target is not Tehran or Caracas alone. It is Beijing, because China does not just import oil, it builds dependence on it. At the same time, when Washington looks toward Greenland, it is not land hunger, it is missile math. Missiles from the Arctic shorten warning time. Defense requires presence. Now add a third layer, Canada drifting closer to China, calling that relationship more predictable. Predictable for whom? This is the system coming into view. Energy control, geography, alliances under stress. These forces are converging, and convergence always produces pressure. In the next part, we need to step backward, because to understand why this is happening now, you have to understand where the system first went wrong. To understand this moment, you have to return to a quieter era, a time when the Arctic was frozen politically and literally. After the Cold War, the logic was simple. Globalization would dilute geography. Trade would replace territory. So the United States stepped back from the Arctic, from domestic chip production, from energy choke points. Greenland was defended, but barely. Canada's northern border was long undefended and ignored. Microchips were offshored. Oil was treated as a commodity, not a weapon. Meanwhile, China watched. It did not rush. It studied cycles. As Western powers demobilized, China invested in shipping lanes, in energy dependence, in research missions under Arctic ice. Then Russia returned, submarines, bombers, joint drills in the far north. This was not coincidence. It was timing. The system drifted into imbalance, and imbalance always invites correction. In the next part, that correction turns visible. One moment, one decision that signals the end of neglect. The first visible rupture comes through oil, not a war, not a speech, a shift. Iranian oil, Venezuelan oil, long treated as sanctions theater, quietly flowing to China. Then control tightens, not by drilling more, by constraining access, by turning oil from a commodity into leverage. This is the moment many miss, because when oil moves, everything else moves with it. Shipping, pricing, political alignment. China feels this immediately, not in rhetoric, in vulnerability. At the same time, U.S. assets concentrate near Venezuela, Caribbean waters, energy corridors. This is not coincidence. It is synchronization. Energy pressure connects to Iran, to shipping routes, to broader containment. If you're watching only headlines, you miss the pattern. If you're watching flows, you see it clearly. This is where strategy becomes visible. If this analysis sharpens how you see power, pause for a moment, share it, because understanding leverage is the first defense against illusion. What looks like an oil story is actually a system story. And in the next part, we open the system itself. Power today does not come from ownership. It comes from control of flows, oil, technology, geography. China understands this. That is why it does not just buy oil, it builds dependence around it. When Iranian and Venezuelan oil flow east, China gains insulation against sanctions, against shocks, against pressure. When those flows tighten, insulation disappears. The same logic applies in the Arctic. Missiles travel shortest paths. Submarines hide best under ice. Without Canada and Greenland, missile defense collapses into guesswork. This is why the Golden Dome matters. Not as a fantasy, but as geometry demands presence. Now layer technology on top. Microchips are the nervous system of power. Offshore, they weaken deterrence. That is why Taiwan Semiconductor matters. Factories are not just factories. They are anchors. Anchors tie systems together. This is the mechanism. Control the flows. Anchor the system. Force choices. Once this is clear, the second crisis becomes inevitable, and it does not arrive quietly. The second rupture appears in the Arctic. Not announced, not debated, detected. Chinese research submarines move under Arctic ice for the first time. This is not science, it is rehearsal. Then come joint drills. Chinese bombers flying from Russian bases over northern routes once ignored. Suddenly the Arctic is no longer peripheral, it is central. And here is the problem. The United States has no naval base in Alaska. Canada has vast territory with minimal defense. Greenland is underprotected. Neglect becomes exposure. At the same time, U.S. naval assets remain concentrated elsewhere, near Venezuela, near energy corridors tied to Iran. Strategy creates trade-offs. Presence in one theater means absence in another. China sees this. Russia exploits it. This is no longer theoretical competition. It is spatial, physical, measurable in miles and minutes. Warning times shrink, deterrence thins. What looks like coordination is actually pressure testing. How fast can the system respond? Where does it bend? The answer determines the next phase, and that phase lands directly on people. In the next part, we move from maps to lives. This is where it reaches you, not as geopolitics, as cost, as anxiety, as uncertainty. When energy becomes leverage, prices stop being neutral. They fluctuate with pressure, with conflict, with alignment. You feel it in fuel, in food, in jobs tied to trade stability. When alliances strain, predictability disappears. A more predictable relationship with China sounds calm, until you realize predictability favors the stronger hand. When microchips are built overseas, vulnerability feels abstract. Until supply chains break, until factories slow, until jobs move or vanish, this is not about ideology, it is about exposure, and exposure always finds ordinary people first. If this resonates, don't just listen, engage, because informed citizens shape resilience. Share this perspective, discuss it. Understanding systems is not elitism, it is self-defense. What happens next will not stop at borders, because the final shockwave is global, and that is where we go next. Once systems shift, they ripple outward. Energy control reshapes alliances. Technology reshapes deterrence. Geography reshapes power. China feels pressure in oil markets, in semiconductor access, in Arctic maneuvering space, so it responds indirectly through partners, through trade realignments. Canada moves closer. Tariffs soften. Strategic language changes. This is not defiance. It is hedging. Across Asia, the message is read clearly. The U.S.-Taiwan deal tightens bonds. $250 billion in investment anchors, technology on American soil. China condemns it because deterrence works best before conflict. Meanwhile, Russia benefits from distraction. The Arctic becomes a shared testing ground. Pressure without provocation. This is how modern competition operates. Below war, above diplomacy, every move forces a choice. Align, hedge, or drift. Drift is the most dangerous option because in a connected system, no country absorbs shock alone. Instability travels fast, and once it spreads, only futures remain. 3 of them, and none are abstract. The future now branches into 3 paths. The first is stabilization. The United States reinforces the Arctic. Energy flows remain controlled, not chaotic. Technology production continues to move home. Deterrence holds, not because of dominance, but because incentives align. The second path is managed tension. Oil pressure persists. Arctic probing continues. Alliances hedge rather than commit. No explosion, but constant friction. This is the world of gray zones. Research submarines, trade deals as signals, defense without declaration. The third path is system fracture. Energy control becomes coercion. Technology decouples unevenly. Allies drift further apart. In this future, miscalculation replaces strategy. Warning times collapse. Deterrence fails, not loudly but quietly. What decides the path is not ideology, it is coordination. Do systems reinforce each other or pull apart under stress? History is clear on this point. Systems fail when leaders confuse movement with control. The choices being made now in oil, in ice, in silicon, they will not reveal their consequences immediately. But the ending is already forming, and it demands one final insight. Power does not announce itself. It arranges conditions. What you are witnessing is not chaos. It is design under pressure. Control over oil flows reshapes leverage. Control over geography reshapes defense. Control over technology reshapes the future. Miss any one of these, and the system weakens. That is the lesson hidden inside Venezuela, inside Greenland, inside Taiwan's factories in Arizona. Great powers do not compete everywhere at once. They compete where systems connect, and today those connections are tightening. The most dangerous mistake is to believe this is temporary. It isn't. This is a structural shift, one that will define security, prosperity, and stability for a generation. If this analysis helped you see the world more clearly, don't let it end here. Subscribe, follow, stay engaged, because the next video goes deeper into what happens when control fails and what replaces it when systems finally break. Understanding power is not about fear, it is about clarity. And clarity in moments like this is everything.